My name is Mohammed Addo, and I'm the Executive Director of PowerShift Africa, a climate and energy think tank that is based in Nairobi but works across the continent. We've convened here to help train African journalists to cover climate change from an African perspective that is centered around African needs and priorities.
And we've seen journalists engage. How important is it for journalists to learn and be able to engage in the area of climate?
Climate change is a scientific issue, and unless we help explain to journalists, the opportunity to help tell the African story and amplify African voice is not going to be realized. So what this meeting was about was largely to help equip them with the understanding of the climate phenomenon and the issues that are at stake in a way that they can be able to explain and even domesticate to an African audience and help link to the African realities around climate change.
There is one thing that came out from you very clearly, the issue of carbon credits, and especially in Africa, the whole fair regime and all that. So how should Africa go about the issue of carbon?
We should be careful not to commodify Africans' nature. I think what we need is to tackle climate change and tackle climate change at the source. The bulk of the emissions that have caused climate change have come as a result of the industrialized countries' emissions. And unless we have them decarbonizing at the source, without offsetting the emissions to Africa, for Africa to help generate pollution permits, which effectively is what these markets are about, we wouldn't be able to hold warming to below 1.5 degrees. If we're serious about tackling climate change, holding warming to below 1.5 degrees, I think it's important for the rich world to lead and to lead the world in decarbonization so that we can inspire the rest of the world to be able to follow in that transition. There's no way you'll be polluting at the source, buying cheap offsets, and sustaining polluting lifestyles and infrastructure, which effectively rewards the fossil industry and commodifying Africa's nature, and in the process actually displacing the best custodians of the forest, who are our indigenous community, in the name of carbon markets. I think we need to be clear, these are pollution permits markets, and we need to say no to them. Unfortunately, given that we've overused the remaining carbon, because we've used the carbon budget, what we need now is decarbonization. And without actual reduction in emissions at massive scale, in a rapid manner, particularly by those big polluter countries, there is no way we can have a business model that is built on offsets and provides grants to Africans for them to commodify their nature. I can't see how we can actually sustain such an economic model. What we need are alternative sources of finance. There is desperation in Africa because of the lack of climate finance, and that is why our governments are falling for it. What we need to do is recognize that these countries that have contributed the least and have an opportunity to leapfrog that energy and become green leaders and build resilient development are owed a climate debt, and that debt needs to be paid so that we can enable them to develop in a climate compatible way. The idea that we can actually use a carbon market mechanism to help get them, to provide them climate finance is not going to be realistic.
We are headed to COP. What should be African message in COP?
That there can't be climate action without finance. COP29 is a finance COP. And I think there is an opportunity for us to help make a strong case for climate finance, and not in the form of loans but grants. We cannot afford to indebt further Africa to help solve a problem we didn't create in the first place. The rich world owe us a climate debt, and I think it's important for them to pay for our adaptation needs and to help pay for our mitigation so that we can contribute to this global effort to tackle climate change.